there's been a lot of talk about the non-relocation agreement as applies to the Oakland Raiders. And a number of people have asked, well, what's a non-relocation agreement? Well, I'm here to tell you. All it is a contract that says you as the team are going to stay in a city, and the bank says, hey, I know you're here now, and so I can trust you to gain money to pay me what you owe me after I give you this upfront cash so that you can build your new NFL stadium in the case of the Raiders in Las Vegas, or Major League Baseball stadium in the case of the Atlanta Braves, or NBA arena in the case of the Sacramento Kings, and I can go on and on and on. These agreements are numerous in professional sports and go back decades. For example, Harris County Stadium, Houston, Texas, for the Houston Texans has a non-relocation agreement. There's even one that applies to the Buffalo Bills going back to the 90s. There are many examples of these. And all it says is, hey, the team's going to stay put, and that the bank doesn't have to run around chasing them after creation, like, pay me my money. I want my money right now. Yeah, I'm going to find you in that other city. Okay? Now think about that in the context of the Oakland Raiders, who, since Mark Davis took over the team in 2011 after the passing of the great Al Davis's father, has made threat after threat after threat after threat of moving the team pretty much on an annual basis. If it wasn't Los Angeles, it was, San Antonio. Or if it wasn't San Antonio, it was Carson. If it wasn't Carson, it was Las Vegas. And did I leave some other city out in the process? Probably not. Only 1 year during that period did the Raiders actively seriously entertain staying in Oakland in a deal that was brought to them. The Raiders never once came forward and said, we want to stay in Oakland and build a new stadium here, and here's our plan. Okay? So everyone sees that, including lenders, and they say, well, gee, in your case, it's really important you sign a non-relocation agreement because you have a habit of jumping around, or at least threatening you to jump around at the drop of a hat. And that a drop of a hat basically is complaining about the lease. I don't like the way this paint was put in. I don't like the way these steel girders were set up. They're not according to state-of-the-art, the Raiders might say. And they would say, based on that and based on our NFL clause regarding state-of-the-art in the lease, we're going to move and we're going to seek place someplace else. That scares lenders like Bank of America. It scares any lender, and I'm saying Bank of America because they happen to be involved with the Raiders in this instance. It would scare anyone. It would scare Goldman Sachs, on and on and on. It's not signed. The agreement is equally as important as the UNLV joint use agreement that's under discussion right now, because without, and Attorney Mark Arnold says one thing, but the simple fact of the matter is that if the Raiders don't sign that non-relocation agreement, they'll be the only team in sports history in the modern era, when I say the modern era, I mean past the year 2000, the 21st century, to not sign a non-relocation agreement and yet secure long-term financing, like 30 years, okay? Folks, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. The only recourse that Mr. Davis has might explain why there are these rumors flying around that Las Vegas Sands and Sheldon Adelson have stepped back into the picture, because remember, Bank of America is brought in to replace the $650 million that he was going to put in. The $750 million from the government is already there. That's not threatened. But this loan is, if the Raiders will not sign this non-relocation agreement. Okay? It is threatened. And I might add this. The $750 million from the government also calls for the same non-relocation agreement, because it gives assurances that they can get a lower interest rate. All right? So that's why it popped up, it being the non-relocation agreement, in the original Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee documents that led to the Southern Nevada Tourism and Improvements Act that was signed October 15th of last year by the Nevada legislature, but that was voted into action by the Nevada legislature, signed by Governor Brian Sandoval last year. So that gives you, in a nutshell, the reason why this non-relocation agreement is so important. It says to a lender, it has the Raiders saying to a lender, hey, we're going to stay put for 30 years. The non-relocation agreement is equal in length to the 30-year lease, okay? And so that says, again, hey, I'm going to pay you money over this time. And not only that, it not only says I'm going to pay you money, but by being in place and operating in that stadium and all that goes with it within the lease, it says to the lender, to Bank of America, that the Raiders and the stadium operating organization will do everything that it can to marshal money to continue to pay Bank of America toward the retirement of that loan or line of credit that was given. That's why it's so important, but it's not unusual. It's very common in sports stadium financing, and the Raiders are bucking the trend right now, apparently trying to be the only organization in sport never to sign one. Stay tuned and subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube.